Donkey Kong Country 2 is considered by many, including yours truly, to be one of the best 2D platformers of all time. Every little thing about that game is solid, and it's very difficult to find real flaws that don't amount to small nitpicks that don't really matter. Making a sequel to DKC2 was just as daunting as making a sequel to Mario 3 or A Link to the Past. How the hell did Rare do it? Well, it only took them a year once again to develop the third entry in the DKC franchise, titled Donkey Kong Country 3: Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. You can consider DKC3 the Super Nintendo's swan song, since the Nintendo 64 came out that very same holiday season in North America. This is probably what caused the game to not sell quite as well as its predecessors and not be played by as many people, myself included. I mentioned in the last video that while I didn't grow up with the DKC sequels, I eventually experienced the second game on an emulator. But when I finished Diddy's Conquest for the first time, I didn't jump into Dixie Kong's Double Trouble right away. Gosh, this subtitle's a mouthful. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I was too preoccupied with discovering my loves for RPGs around this time that I wasn't as interested in checking out the third game. I didn't play DKC3 until it came out on the Wii U Virtual Console, and until this review, that was my one and only playthrough. I got the most out of it that I could though. I fully completed it like I did when I first played DKC2, and I had a really good time with the game overall. But while I've gone back to replay the first two entries many times over the years, I've neglected this one for some reason. Maybe it's because in the back of my mind, this game's reputation kept me from revisiting it. Donkey Kong Country 3 is known as the black sheep of the series, but I never actually found out why. I just knew folks preferred the other titles for whatever reason. And like I said, I really enjoyed that first playthrough. Not as much as DKC2 mind you, but nothing about it was worthy of black sheep status to me. Because of this, I have been looking forward to this video the most. So let's just cut right to the chase. It was only appropriate for Rare to make a GBA version for this game to give the trilogy a proper send-off on the console. Not much more to be said that I haven't already said. There are similar compromises and additions here as there were in the other GBA ports, so I didn't spend much time playing this one since I want to put most of my focus on the original as usual. Although I will mention that GBA players get a brand new world not present on the SNES, so that's pretty cool. However, thanks to a comment I got from one Hans Gretel, I decided to go out of my way and listen to some songs from this version's soundtrack. And dude, thank you for bringing this to my attention because this OST is freaking incredible. Unlike the other two ports that basically tried to emulate the original soundtracks using a vastly inferior sound chip, resulting in music that wasn't nearly as pleasing to the ears, lead composer David Wise was instead told to redo the OST for DKC3 GBA, and the result is one of the most underrated soundtracks on the Game Boy Advance. At least I'm pretty sure it's underrated. I mean, the game itself is already underrated, so I think it's a safe bet. At the risk of jumping the gun and revealing my thoughts on the SNES version's music, the music in the GBA version is a lot more energetic and, pardon the pun here, funky in my opinion. And it doesn't sound bad at all despite the audio constraints, which makes sense because this was the entire reason why David Wise recomposed the OST in the first place. And apparently trying to get the SNES songs to work on the GBA would cause units to catch fire? I guess that's what they mean when they call certain songs bangers. Honestly, if I hadn't already set up these reviews in a way that restricted me to play the SNES versions only, I probably would have played the GBA port of this game for this video. If you still aren't keen on the idea of playing with a slight graphical downgrade, at the very least look up the songs online. Again, thank you Hans for effectively adding a full minute to this video's runtime. Alright, time for the story.
That's it?
Donkey Kong Country has the empty banana horde in the first level. Donkey Kong Country 2 has the letter from K. Rool in that game's first level that pretty much spells out all you need to know. Donkey Kong Country 3 has nothing. Really. Not even the GBA version has a cutscene at the beginning anymore. How dare this game make me do research. Set after the events of Diddy's Conquest, one day Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong mysteriously disappear while they were out exploring a region called the Northern Hemisphere, or as I like to call it, Canada. Seeing as now both of the original heroes are missing, Dixie Kong is volunteered to head off on a new adventure to find them, accompanied by her cousin Kiddy Kong, who may or may not have volunteered. The likelier scenario is that Funky just wanted to get rid of him cause... look at him. What, do you want to change his diaper? It turns out that Donkey and Diddy were kidnapped by a new enemy this time.
Chaos!
He's a robot and has assumed command of the Kremlin since King K. Rool is nowhere to be found. Never mind, there he is. After defeating Baron K. Rulenstein, okay, the first and fourth members of the DK crew are saved, and that's the end of Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. Don't worry, we'll get to the giant banana bird later. Not much more complicated than the other stories we've seen. What makes it interesting is that the two characters you'd expect to be at the forefront of this game are missing from action until the very end. And you know, that may also be why this game is not as popular as the first two DKC games. Dixie Kong is well liked, but nowhere near as well known as Donkey or Diddy. So yeah, in Donkey Kong Country 3, you play as Dixie Kong and newcomer Kiddy Kong for the whole journey. Like with Diddy last time, Dixie hasn't seen any big changes. Her hair twirl is still super useful for getting past tough platforming challenges, and she still holds throwable items above her head as before. Kiddy Kong is essentially this game's Donkey Kong. He's slow, has a low jump, is stronger than Dixie in the 2 or 3 times where that actually matters, and notably heavier, which is good to know when looking for secrets. Kiddy is alright. I don't have a vendetta against him or anything like that. A lot of people straight up dislike this character, and yeah, I'm not particularly a fan of his design either, but that's not enough for me to hate him. My main issue with Kiddy is he doesn't really have a stake in this adventure. His reason for being here is, well, I don't know why he's here. In the first game, Donkey and Diddy are best buddies, so they help each other out in trying to get the banana horde back. In the second game, Diddy wants to rescue said best buddy, and Dixie understandably wants to lend her boyfriend a hand on this dangerous mission. In the third game, who gives a fuck, here's an overweight toddler who can somehow bounce on water, have fun. Comparing the protagonists of each game, this duo doesn't look as attractive. I do prefer Dixie and Kiddy together over Donkey and Diddy in a gameplay sense. The kid's ability to bust through weak terrain and I guess the water hop thing makes him more fun to play as than Donkey to me. But there's something weird about this pairing that I can't quite put into words. This is all inconsequential though, it doesn't hurt the game's quality in the slightest. Kiddy Kong isn't the worst thing in the world. He's not as memorable as the other Kongs, but I don't mind his inclusion. Donkey Kong Country 3 borrows a lot from Donkey Kong Country 2. In fact, if I had to describe DKC 3 in a nutshell, I'd say it's basically a lesser DKC 2, but not by a whole lot. It retains a lot of the aspects that I adored about the prequel, but it fumbles a bit in a few points, just enough for me to not like it quite as much. For starters, I don't think this game leaves a good first impression. When I started playing through the game again for this review, I was getting concerned. The first world, gameplay-wise mind you, did not captivate me in the slightest. The level design in the beginning stages is bland. Please let me know if I'm being too harsh, but most of the levels in the first area boil down to straight lines with not a lot standing in your way. Even bonus rooms in these stages are often in plain view, as if no effort was put into hiding them. The mill levels are exceptions, but if this kept up for the rest of the game, you know, only getting 2 standout levels per world, I was afraid I'd have to make a fairly negative video. Fortunately, to my relief, that wasn't the case. Starting in World 2, DKC 3 delivers quality stages on par with some of the best from DKC 2. It's astonishing how much this game improves after beating the first boss. And while I have mostly positive things to say from here on out, I do have to dock DKC 3 some points for having an unexciting opening. I mean it guys, Lakeside Limbo, Tidal Trouble, and especially Skidda's Row are super boring. I was on autopilot when going through these, and I hate that they're right at the beginning because they can potentially make new players stop right here thinking that this is all there is to look forward to. But things only go up from here, trust me. Riverside Race, Ripsaw Rage, and Lightning Lookout are some of the funnest levels in the whole trilogy. They have challenging gimmicks that I've come to look forward to from the Donkey Kong Country franchise. And one thing I will commend every level for is their environments. After playing the trilogy back to back, I've come to the conclusion that DKC 3 is the best looking of the 3. The new character sprites are super detailed, and as I said, the level environments are stunning. Since this game is set in Canada, I mean the Northern Hemisphere, the settings take heavy inspiration from the real world's Pacific Northwest, for example. And come on, how can you not think of Canada when looking at some of these level themes, like the waterfalls, riverbanks, and the forest where you're literally being chased by a giant saw in one of them? You could argue that this is a step back from the areas you explored in DKC 2 that deviated from the generic natural environments that made up the majority of the first game's art design. But these stages' environments are so detailed and colorful and straight up beautiful that I don't care. The caves look infinitely more appealing than they did in DKC 1, and what better way to bring back the vertical level design from the second game than by building the cliff levels around it. And again, DKC 3 follows the tradition of giving every level a unique identity. You can be dealing with reverse controls in one of the sewer levels and zooming at unsafe speeds through the pipes in another. In Fireball Frenzy, you go through a factory while avoiding fireballs being launched by these new carbine enemies into the foreground. A really cool looking effect, by the way. And in Blazing Bazookas, you have to deal with bazooka enemies that shoot all kinds of different barrels for you to bounce off of to get through the stage. Speaking of the factories and industrial settings in general, DKC3 is filled with all these mechanical, robotic elements as well. I find that to be pretty cool, but I wish it was used more. The Zingers, for example, have been mechanized. You won't find a single regular Zinger on your journey. But most of the other Kremlings haven't received the same types of upgrades. I wish it was like DKC2 where the returning baddies were altered even if just a little in some cases to fit with the game's pirate theme. I guess you can say that this keeps things more varied, it keeps you on your toes while playing because you don't know what you'll run into. But that means it's not as easy to classify one singular trope Dixie Kong's Double Trouble is going for. It's more of a hodgepodge of a bunch of ideas, which gives me the impression that Rare probably couldn't decide on a fixed direction for the game. I've gotta say, the thing that disappointed me the most about Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, at least the SNES version, was the soundtrack. I had a hard time getting any of these songs to stick as I played. I'm not a music expert, so I don't always know how to describe exactly what I enjoy and don't enjoy about music, but a lot of the music tracks in DKC3 are nothing more than background noise to me. Most of the time, there's nothing in these arrangements for me to remember and latch onto. The instrumentation sounds nice, there's nothing wrong with the OST in that way, but the majority of it is forgettable, I'm sorry. The only songs that really stood out to me were the ones that I would listen to over and over again, such as the Overworld theme and the Bonus Room theme. Nuts and Bolts is the only one from the regular levels that made me go, this sounds really good. Everything else is just there. David Wise was joined by Evelyn Fisher when composing the game's music, who also co-composed for the first game soundtrack alongside Wise and Robin Beanland. I guess they just weren't feeling it as much when working on DKC3, which is a shame. Like I mentioned earlier, the GBA version has a much better soundtrack in my opinion. It's more my jam. The bonus theme in that version is not something I care for a whole lot though. The original one is my favorite in this case. Now that we're on that topic, bonus rooms make a return for the third time and they are extremely similar to the ones in DKC2, right down to the objectives. The only new bonus game objective this time has you collecting a certain number of green bananas to make the bonus coin appear. And I'm not a big fan of this one, only because some of these are extremely strict. If you don't get a green banana quickly, it will disappear and will likely spawn in another location, wasting time. As a matter of fact, where the bananas spawn is completely random. Sometimes the next one will appear so far away that it's nearly impossible to reach it since you're also trying to avoid shit that can hurt you and prematurely end the game, while other times they can appear right on top of you. The thought of speedrunning the 103% category of this game terrifies me. As a whole, the bonus rooms are a lot less forgiving this time around. It could be because I'm not very familiar with them, but I had to retry a bunch of these more times than I can count. Some are flat out cruel, like the one where you're riding the toboggan and have to collect every star. If you miss just one, you're shit out of luck, you're not getting the bonus coin. To go on a short tangent here, all of the toboggan levels suck. They increase the speed of the vehicle, and thanks to that lovely screen crunch I've brought up in the other reviews, avoiding the obstacles is a nightmare. I'll take the minecart and roller coaster stages over these in a heartbeat. Kongfuse Cliffs also has a major screen crunch issue. I'm looking at the top of the screen the entire time and a copter will still pass by and kill me. Back to the bonus rooms, I'm happy that there's still a reward for getting all the collectibles once more. The Lost World is back, and like last time, you unlock new optional levels by paying 15 bonus coins for each one, except for the last one which costs 25 bonus coins. I'd say that DKC2 is the hardest of the SNES trilogy, but DKC3 undoubtedly has the harder Lost World levels. Stampede, Sprint, and Rocket Rush are the ones I have the most beef with. The first one is basically a mock speed section from Sonic 06 starring Ellie the Terrified Elephant. My eyes always hurt by the end of it because of how fast you move. And it's absolute hell when trying to complete it because you have to keep Harry alive the entire time to access the level's sole bonus room. It's trial and error, just like Rocket Rush. The first part isn't so bad since you can somewhat control how fast the rocket descends. I say somewhat because it doesn't always listen to my inputs. But the second half is unbeatable unless you know what's ahead. If you crash into the cliffs, you don't die, you just slow down. But if this happens more than once, you are not getting to the top. These two combined with Animal Antics form the unholy triforce of Donkey Kong Country. I'll save the rest of the optional content for the end of the video. For now, let's go over the animal buddies. On Guard, Squawks, Squitter, and Quawks return, and their roles have been shrunk for the most part. While they have the same abilities they had in DKC2, there aren't as many stages that star them. The lack of Squitter hurts me the most, since as you all know, he's my favorite one. And what do you know, one of the few levels he's in happens to be one of the best in the game. The persistent reticle tailing your ass makes it so tense, I love it. Quawks is the odd one out here because he actually shows up in a couple of stages this time. The main gimmick with him is that he has to carry barrels and drop them on enemies to kill them and clear a path forward. There's actually quite a few clever puzzles that require this barrel dropping mechanic. I know he was in DKC2, but DKC3 feels like Quawks' real debut. And although the others don't get as much love anymore, one of the new animal buddies does, and she's one of the best in the series, Ellie the elephant. The designers clearly had a lot of ideas for her. She's the animal buddy you'll be using the most. Ellie may not have Rambi's ferocity, but she can use her trunk to pick up barrels and use them as a makeshift attack, or in select stages where there's water nearby, she can store the water and shoot long-range lethal droplets to kill enemies. She's unable to swim underwater, so there's a couple of times where you'll have to fall into the water from a high altitude and let gravity do its work for the bonus barrel. Now, is it just me, or does it seem like Rare loved Ellie a little too much? To me, she has the exact opposite problem of some of the other animal buddies. She is overused. Murky Mill, an Ellie exclusive level, shows up as early as the first world, and it's one of many. Oh yeah, and her fear of mice is why she's running faster than the freaking Roadrunner in that Stampede Sprint level I talked about. The only other new animal buddy is Perry the Parallel Bird. You can't play as him, instead he flies parallel above you and mimics your every move. Sometimes he will turn into a bonus barrel if you reach a no animal sign with him, so it's your job to keep him alive until you get there. Do I have to bring up Stampede Sprint again? Animal buddies as a concept were more fleshed out in DKC2. DKC3 gives us the most versatile one yet, but it came at the cost of shoving the others to the sidelines. Nonetheless, they're better here than they were in DKC1. And let's savor them while we can, because animal buddies will never be the same again. On the other hand, I think DKC3 has the best boss fights thus far. There's still room for improvement, none of these guys are particularly difficult, but the means by which you fight them are super creative. Not counting Chaos, you can't even jump on these guys to hurt them. There's this sentient barrel you have to push over the edge by throwing bugs into its mouth, a giant spider that has to be hit in the face with barrels, a slug he fights as Ellie by blinding it with her spit, Frosty the snowman who challenges you to a snowball fight, a big lurchin you fight as On Guard, and Baron K. Rulenstein, which isn't as challenging as the previous K. Rool encounters, but again, the way you fight him makes up for it, throwing barrels at his backpack and dodging electricity and fireballs. Pretty lame that he doesn't have a unique boss theme anymore though. The final battle in the Lost World also ends in a very anticlimactic fashion. The screen just abruptly fades to black. I know this isn't the true ending of the game, but they could have done something better than what we got. Getting the true ending is no longer a matter of completing every bonus room, finding every DK coin, and conquering the Lost World. DKC3 has a much meatier postgame thanks to the addition of another collectible and a whole-ass trade quest involving the Brothers Bear. Not the Brother Bears, the Brothers Bear. Was there a copyright issue? Probably. So here's how it goes. Your ultimate goal is to rescue the 15 banana birds in exchange for the Banana Bird Queen's help to stop K. Rool. I'm not calling him this anymore. Most of the banana birds are hidden around the world, and I'm not referring to the levels. DKC3 has a world map that you can move around in freely using Funky's rental services where you can borrow his vehicles to access new areas. This is one of the best things about this game. I've always liked when platformers add secrets on the actual overworld map. Super Mario 3D World does something like this, and it takes exploration to a whole new level. As you progress through the game and get better vehicles by beating bosses, more hidden banana bird locations open up to you. They're hidden in caves where you have to play a game of Simon Says. I'm embarrassed to disclose the number of times I failed this minigame, so let's just skip this part. Funky's gyrocopter is what you really want, as it lets you reach banana bird caves that are normally inaccessible. You unlock the gyrocopter by getting all 41 DK coins, which in turn means you have to get every bonus coin to unlock the Lost World levels containing the rest of the DK coins. This is another nitpick I have with DKC3 actually. The DK coins are now all held by enemies called coins, spelled with a K. It's not super different from last time, looking for the coin is still the objective, but now you have to use steel barrels and ricochet them off walls or perform some other roundabout trickery with them to kill the coin and steal their DK coin. Confused yet? Some of these are satisfying to solve, others are annoying. It's a mixed bag. At the end of the day, DKC2 handled this better. Plus, their hurt boxes are absolutely busted. Come on, you're gonna tell me that didn't count? With the gyrocopter, you can find every banana bird except 4 of them. This is where the brothers Bear come into play, the only other supporting NPCs aside from Wrinkly, Funky, and Swanky Kong. The good thing is that Wrinkly no longer charges you for wanting to save your game, but Swanky has decided to pivot his operation into a carnival with 3 mini-games for you to participate in. These are ass. The brothers Bear are scattered across the northern hemisphere. You can trade key items with them in return for other key items that another one of the bears might need. Keep doing this and eventually you'll get the remaining banana birds. The funniest one is Brash, since he has a temper tantrum after you beat his record in one of the earlier levels. A temper tantrum so earth-shaking that it affects the world map and opens the way to a banana bird cave. As I stated, once you find all the banana birds, the banana bird queen will take care of K. Rool in a silly, albeit amusing sequence. This game is weird. Also, I finished the game with 103% completion, even though I swore that the max you could get is 105%. Turns out you can only get 105 if you play on toughest mode by entering a code before starting a new game. All it does is remove checkpoint barrels and a good chunk of the DK barrels from what I was able to find. Even though this is the official ending, there's something that still feels incomplete about it. I have this suspicion that DKC3 was rushed. There isn't any build up to the Banana Bird side quest, and the inconsistent theming of the levels as well as the presence of jank in areas that had been ironed out in DKC2 are off-putting. And it might be my imagination, but the controls don't feel as responsive as they used to. I'm probably going crazy, but I swear it took me a couple of levels before I adjusted to the handling. It's possible that Rare wanted to get this game out as quickly as they could so that they could shift all their focus on the N64. Even Wrinkly can be seen playing the console from time to time. She doesn't want anything to do with this late Super Nintendo game either. If Rare took more time to polish the minor blemishes, explore the Banana Bird questline more in depth, and flesh out the nature versus technology concept the designers were clearly interested in tackling, this game could have been as great as Diddy's Conquest. But as it stands, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble isn't as refined as its prequel. However, I'm glad to say that I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to. I'm glad I didn't do a 180 and go back on my first impressions from my playthrough 7 years ago. It's still a favorable platformer that I will try to revisit more often. And with that, we have looked at all the Donkey Kong Country games on the Super Nintendo, meaning that the next time we meet will be on the Nintendo Wii with Retro Studios' first attempt at a DKC sequel, Donkey Kong Country Returns. Until then, be safe, take care, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.